Hi class, welcome back. Now we are going to talk about global migration. So for this lesson, we are going to talk about the following. For the content outline, we're going to talk about first the migrants and their roots. Second, undocumented migrants. Third, changing origins and destinations. And lastly, global city migrant streams. Now, in here, we're going to talk about the following important terms and the terms that you should also remember. So, we have the migrants and their roots. We're going to talk about migration, migrant, immigration, immigrant, diaspora, and exile. So, now let's talk about the migrants and their roots. So, by 2015, almost 250 million people were living in a nation other than the one into which they were born. They have been residing in the new nation for more than 1 year, fitting the definition of international migration or international migrant. So in simple terms, back in 2015, there are a lot of people started to move from different locations, from one location to another. And also, since they are residing not just in only in one location, they are also residing and keep on moving from one location to another more than 1 year. They are now called the international migrant. So like just here in the Philippines, we have a lot of Filipinos started to work abroad as nurses, as doctors, or as caregivers, as teachers as well, and also some OFWs like helpers and many more. So these people, okay, they are called the migrant. But if they started to reside in a specific location more than 1 year to from one location to another, they are now called the international migrant. So these are the top destinations of migrants. So first is of course the United States of America. So a lot of Filipinos actually and other foreign countries and foreign nationals wanted to actually migrate in United States because of the so-called greener pasture. The next one would be Germany. The third would be Russia. And the fourth, I'm sorry for the misspell for that, is the United Kingdom. And also, since there are top destinations, there are also top places or origins. So that would be first would be the Asia, and second would be the Europe. Actually, a lot of Asian would be from, of course, well, I'm not saying a lot, but majority would be in from the Philippines, right? So if you've watched movies, there are actually a lot of Filipinos right now rotating or in appearing in movies and etc. So like in the Spider-Man, right? So there's the Filipino Lola there. So it just shows that there's a migrant there. So the Filipino heritage or the Filipinos are actually across the globe. So migrants and their roots. So as you can see here, these are the different cities and also countries where most of the migrants actually stay. Okay, so the first one would be, of course, I keep on saying this, was in the United States, specifically in Miami. Okay, so actually, I believe we also have a family member who's living now in Miami, so that's really common. So that's actually 39%. The next one would be London, UK. So that's 37%. Next is the Los Angeles in USA as well. So that's 35%. New York, that's also in USA. That is 31%. And then Germany, Munich. I'm not sure if I pronounce it right, but that's 27%. And also France in Paris, that's 25%. So now let's talk about the migrants and let's continue talking about the migrants and their roots. So some of the factors for preferred location would be the following. So the first one would be economic opportunities. So mostly urban settings. So just like here in the Philippines, so the more urbanized the area, the more opportunities there will be. Okay, so if you're living in the provinces, some of our kababayans who are from the provinces actually tend to migrate to the city. Okay, so they believe that there are better schools in here, better work opportunities, and many more. And also because of the economic status of that location. So they believe that since the economy there is booming or much better, so they think that the opportunities are open for them there. So the first one would be the economic opportunity. The next one is multiculturalism, so openness to diversity and highly accommodating. So the second factor would be if the organization, I mean not the organization, but the place rather, the place where they wanted to migrate is it open for diversity? So there are less discrimination, it's open to different nationalities and many more. The third one would be the political situation. Of course, it's very important to actually consider whether the place is actually, some actually others consider if the place is a capitalist, democratic, and many more, because of course their way of living would also be influenced under that country. So, some Asian nations like Japan and China are the only ones with global cities that aren't a preferred destination due to xenophobia. Okay, so we also, I believe you are all familiar that Japan and China are actually less preferred because of the existence of the xenophobia. So if you're familiar, I believe most of you guys are very familiar with xenophobia, but this is actually a discrimination or prejudice against people from different countries. So Asian countries or Asian nations like Japan and China actually is are the few countries where it is preferred, least preferred. I'm sorry, least preferred to be migrated at because of the existence of xenophobia. Or again, the xenophobia is the presence of racism or racialism, and also the presence of hatred, like racial hatred, and many more. So that's the migrants and their roots. So we also have the undocumented migrants. So the undocumented migrants are the persons who either enter or remain in nations illegally, are referred to as undocumented because they lack the legal paperwork. Or, and also the more detailed definition of undocumented migrants would be varies from nation to nation. So for example, okay, so before I go to the example, the undocumented migrants, that's why it's called undocumented, because they are not duly legal and documented to stay at a specific place. So some criterias or some documents actually depends on the need of the country. So like for example, if you go to the United States and you just applied for a student visa and you wanted to work there as an employee or a citizen as well, you will become an illegal because you just only applied for what do you call this? You just only applied for a student visa. Okay? But there are also other locations around the world wherein Filipinos does not have to have a visa to enter their country. So I believe if you're going to search online via Google, you'll find that there are a lot of countries actually offering the migration of a lot of Asians to their place. Okay, because of their need as well, and many more. So in simple terms, undocumented migrants are actually those who are illegally staying in that specific location or country, and because of that, they will be tend to be kicked out from the country and be asked to return back to where they came from because they are, of course, illegal. So, furthermore, undocumented migrants, changes in national laws about migration have contributed to many being undocumented migrants. So, the case of Syria and Iraq in 2015 to 2016, they made it to Greece and Turkey as a temporary refuge. Some European nations, such as Austria and Denmark, that pledged to accept them changed their laws, trapping the refugees in refugee camps. So, like what I've mentioned a while ago, the undocumented migrants actually depends on the laws implemented in the country where they are actually staying at. So actually, being undocumented is actually not just illegal but also dangerous, because if you are actually putting yourself in at a risk, wherein of course you're staying illegal, so other legal illegal stuff will also might occur. So that's why we have other OFWs who are actually getting beaten by their employers because they believe that since they are illegal, they will not be covered by the law. But of course, that would be ignorant to think of that, because of course, undocumented migrants are still humans, and since even though they think that they are not what they call this ruining any laws or disobeying any laws, they will still disobey the law of man, or the act of man. Okay, so as you can see there, that is the undocumented migrants. Okay, so it is illegal and it should not be done. Okay, so just the case in Syria and Iraq before, where they opened their gates for refugees. However, the law actually changes over time, so some of the refugees are now being stuck in refugee camps. So, and because of that, other legal matters comes in, and it would be very difficult for the migrants as well. Furthermore, many undocumented migrants live economically depressed nations where there are high rates of poverty, unemployment, illiteracy, and malnutrition. So these countries are mostly in sub-Saharan Africa, parts of Asia, and Middle East, and the Caribbean. So some of the reasons why there are a lot of undocumented migrants is because of poverty. Just like here in the Philippines. So the reason why there are a lot of Filipinos who are actually who came from the provinces. So I'm not saying that all provinces here are poor, but some or majority of the provinces here in the country are actually in the state of poverty, and because of that state, a lot of Filipinos tend to travel abroad just to have a greener pasture and to earn more so they can give back here, or to give their salary to their loved ones who are staying in the province. Okay, so one of the reasons is, of course, the poverty. Second would be unemployment. So some of the migrants, especially our OFW who are working abroad, actually can't find a job here in the Philippines. So they try to look at a job here in our country, especially in Metro Manila. But however, some of them does not succeed. It's either they got a job but it's little to be sent to their family, or they really can't afford to go to school, and their educational background is not enough to get them a job. So one reason of it is unemployment. So also, since since they have because of that, sometimes they also lack documents. So the migrants actually tend to TNT. I forgot the term what TNT is about. But it goes from one place to another, hiding from the law enforcement from that place, so they will not be deported back to the Philippines. Okay, and then the next one would be illiteracy. So sometimes, because there are also scammers, well, they or yes, what they call this, they pretend that they actually from an agency, and they needed to pay a certain amount, so they can go to a specific country and work there, and everything will be provided, their visa and many more. However, when they got to the country, they just realized that that's actually an illegal agency, and it's actually a scam agency. So there, some of the undocumented migrants is because they are illiterate to search on, illiterate to know and search on which ones are actually legal, and so they can avoid the illegal process, and they can actually work legally in a country where they wanted to work. Next one would be malnutrition. It actually works hand in hand with poverty. So since there is poverty going on, sometimes a lack of nutrition or resources can also affect the reason why migration or undocumented migration do happen. So especially if there is a war, so since there are no enough resources to provide their basic needs, they would actually look for another country where they can stay and migrate for good. Okay, so that's it. So malnutrition. So again, so some of the countries where undocumented migrants actually exist, or came from rather, that's Saharan Africa, Middle East, and the Caribbean. So the changing origins and destination trends. So a growing migrant stream emigrating from economically middle level nations such as India and Mexico. Within these origin nations, it is frequently persons of relatively higher status who have been the first to migrate. We have the concept Matthew effect, the tendency for those who start out with the most to wind up gaining the most. In this context, the first wave of migrants benefit the most compared to subsequent waves. All right. Okay. So in here, the Matthew effect, the Matthew effects actually is telling us more about the migration and its effect on the country. Okay, so sometimes since migration exists, sometimes those who actually came first in that specific country are the ones who actually started to gain gain a lot in terms of financial and stability, because they are the first to arrive there, and since they are the first to arrive there, the opportunities came to their feet first, compared to those who came later. So in simple terms, those who actually started there first actually have a lot of opportunities because they started or they came first, compared to others, or compared to those who came late. So that is the concept for this one, and also the concept of Matthew effect. Okay. Okay, so to continue that, the same economically middle level nations that have more frequently become places of origin have become migrant destinations. So as you can see, actually, the very reason why the United States of America is very famous is because of the migration, and also the place where most of the migrants wanted to be, because actually it becomes actually a place of migration where most where it is open to migration, and it came from it actually opens its door for for a lot of things. Okay, so like for example, Brazil and India. So I'll be cutting this first, and then I'll be sending you the second video.